I see your identification?
Identification for what?
I'm fishing on a public beach. We need to verify your immigration status.
My immigration status? On what grounds?
Just show your ID.
I have lived here my whole life. I do not consent to a search.
If you don't cooperate, you will be arrested.
I am not resisting.
You are making
The security camera from the beachfront hotel captured the moment everything changed on that quiet Saturday morning at exactly 7:23 a.m. A man stood knee-deep in the water holding a fishing rod steady against the calm waves. He looked like someone enjoying peace before the crowds arrived. Just another early morning, routine, nothing special, nothing worth noticing, but within minutes 2 federal agents would walk toward him and turn a simple moment into something that would cost millions of dollars, ruin careers, and shake an entire system. The man did not know that yet. He was focused on the gentle pull of the line and the quiet sound of water around him. When he heard footsteps behind him, he turned slowly, calm but alert. The 2 agents were already close, badges, visible, eyes fixed on him, like they had already made a decision. Before we go any further, where are you watching from right now? Drop your location below. And if you're new here, take a second to subscribe, because this story is just getting started, and what happens next will shock you completely. The man stepped out of the water, placing his rod aside. "Morning," he said evenly. "What seems to be the problem?" There was no greeting back, no smile, no respect. "Can I see your identification?" one agent asked. The tone was cold. Not a question, a demand. The man paused. "Identification for what?" "I am fishing on a public beach." The second agent moved closer. "We need to verify your status." "My status?" "Your immigration status." The words hit hard, clear, direct, and wrong. The man looked at both of them carefully. His face stayed calm, but his eyes sharpened. "On what grounds are you asking me that question?" he said. The first agent stiffened. "We have authority here. Just answer." Around them, the beach was slowly coming alive. A jogger passed by but slowed her pace. A man walking a dog stopped for a moment. No one said anything yet, but people were watching. The man took a breath. "Do you have any reason to believe I am not supposed to be here?" "Just show your ID," the agent said again, more force in his voice now. The man reached into a waterproof pouch and pulled out his wallet. He handed over his license calmly. The agent studied it for longer than needed, turning it over, checking every detail, looking for something wrong. "This says you were born here," he said. "Yes," the man replied. "I have lived here my whole life." "What are you doing here?" The man looked at the fishing rod, then back at the agent. "Fishing." The answer was simple, obvious. But the next question changed everything. "Are you sure you should be here?" Silence followed. The man understood exactly what that meant. He stayed calm. "Am I being detained, or am I free to go?" The agents exchanged a quick look. "We are conducting an investigation," the second one said. "That is not an answer," the man replied. "I need to know my status here." The tension grew fast. The jogger had stopped completely now. She pulled out her phone. The man noticed everything. He always did. "I do not consent to any search," he said clearly as one agent reached toward his bag. The agent ignored him. He grabbed the tackle box and opened it, dumping everything onto the sand. Hooks, lines, tools scattered everywhere. "Stop," the man said, voice firm. "That is not legal." "If you do not cooperate, you will be arrested," the agent snapped. "For what?" "For interfering." The man shook his head slowly. "For standing here? For knowing my rights?" The words were calm, but they carried weight. More people had stopped now. Phones were up, recording. The moment was no longer private. The man pulled out his own phone. He started recording too. "Put that away," the agent ordered. "No," the man said. "I have the right to record this." The second agent stepped forward and grabbed his wrist. You need to stop. The grip was tight, unnecessary. The man did not pull away. He did not fight. You are making a mistake, he said quietly. Around them, the whispers grew louder. This isn't right, someone said. Keep filming, another voice added. The situation was slipping. The first agent reached for handcuffs. You are coming with us. On what legal grounds? The man asked, steady. Suspected violation. What violation? We will figure that out later. The man nodded once. I am not resisting, he said clearly. But this is unlawful. The cuffs snapped shut around his wrists. Cold, tight, final. The ocean moved behind him, his fishing line still drifting in the water forgotten. What started as a peaceful morning had turned into something else. Something serious. Something dangerous. People were no longer just watching. They were recording everything. The man sat on the sand, breathing slowly, keeping control while the agents stood above him, unsure of what they had just started. One wrong choice had already been made. But more were coming. The crowd kept growing. Voices whispered. Questions rose. This is not right. Keep recording. This is crazy. The moment was bigger than anyone there understood. In just a short time, everything would change for everyone involved. The man looked up toward the horizon, calm and steady. He knew one thing for sure. This was not over. Not even close. The real story was only beginning. The handcuffs were tight, biting into the man's wrists, but he did not struggle. He remained seated on the wet sand, letting the cold water lap at his legs. His name was Dr. Elijah Grant, and he was not just any man fishing that morning. He was a marine biologist, a decorated Navy veteran, and someone who had spent decades studying and protecting America's coastal waters. Nothing about him matched the suspicion the agents were treating him with. The crowd of witnesses had grown to about a dozen people now. Phones were out. Some were filming, others simply observing in shock. One woman, standing about 20 feet away, called out, "He hasn't done anything wrong. Stop harassing him." Her voice carried across the beach, sharp and clear. The agent who had first approached Dr. Grant, a man in his early 40s named Frank Reynolds, shifted uncomfortably. His partner, a younger woman named Linda Hayes, fidgeted, looking around at the witnesses. Both agents were plainclothes, but their badges were visible, their hands occasionally brushing their weapons. They had thought their presence gave them unquestionable authority. That assumption was about to be tested. Dr. Grant raised his voice, calm but firm. I am not resisting. I am asserting my constitutional rights. I have already provided identification. I have done nothing illegal. You are detaining me without probable cause. Reynolds' face flushed. Sir, you're interfering with a federal investigation. We have authority to question anyone within 100 miles of a border. Dr. Grant looked at him steadily. The Gulf of Mexico is not a border, and even if it were, you need reasonable suspicion. You have none. I have lived here my entire life. I am a U.S. citizen. Hayes stepped closer, pointing at the waterproof bag attached to his belt. We need to search your belongings. I do not consent to a search, Dr. Grant said. His hands were still visible, palms up, showing he posed no threat. You do not have probable cause. What you are doing is unlawful. Reynolds ignored him and moved toward the tackle box, opening it roughly. Fishing lines, hooks, knives, and small containers scattered across the sand. Dr. Grant didn't resist, but his voice carried over the tension. This is harassment. This is illegal. Every item in here is for fishing. You are violating my Fourth Amendment rights. Hayes reached for the waterproof bag. Dr. Grant stepped back, still calm. Do not touch my property. I have explicitly stated I do not consent. Any further action is a violation of my civil rights, and you will be held accountable. A murmur ran through the onlookers. The jogger who had been filming earlier now raised her phone higher, making sure the camera captured everything. Two teenagers on skateboards stopped to watch, one whispering, "This is insane." Reynolds' hand went to his radio. "We need transport," he muttered, not even glancing at the growing crowd. "Subject is being uncooperative and possibly obstructing investigation." Dr. Grant shook his head slowly. "I am cooperating under protest. I have answered all questions and provided identification. Recording public officers is not obstruction. Standing on a public beach is not obstruction. Following the law is not obstruction." Hayes' jaw tightened. "Sir, put that phone away right now. I have the right to record you. You are performing your duties in public. This is protected under law," Dr. Grant said, voice steady, eyes unwavering. Reynolds stepped closer, invading his personal space. "You are coming with us." "On what grounds?" Dr. Grant asked, calm, precise. "You have no probable cause. I have committed no crime. Explain the legal justification for this detention." Hayes looked at Reynolds, unsure. Reynolds hesitated. We will let a judge decide that," he said finally. The crowd was silent now. Everyone watched as Reynolds snapped the handcuffs tighter around Dr. Grant's wrists. "You are being falsely arrested," Dr. Grant said aloud, for the witnesses. "This is racial profiling. This is illegal. You will answer for this." A man with a dog took out his phone. "I'm calling the police," he said. Another bystander whispered, "This is going to blow up online." Dr. Grant leaned forward slightly, picking up his own phone. "I am recording this as evidence. You are violating my rights in front of multiple witnesses." Hayes grabbed his wrist. "Put the phone down." "I will not," Dr. Grant said calmly. "You are making physical contact without justification. I want your badge numbers, your names, and the incident report filed immediately. I am documenting everything." Reynolds' face turned red. "You are making this harder than it needs to be." "No," Dr. Grant said firmly. "You are making this harder because you chose to violate my rights." At that moment, an unmarked SUV pulled up. A man in his 50s, tall with a commanding presence, stepped out. He introduced himself, voice firm but professional. "I am Supervisory Agent Robert Lane. Let's go over what happened." The crowd tensed, phones still raised. Lane looked at Dr. Grant. "Sir, can you tell me your version?" Dr. Grant remained seated on the sand, hands still cuffed. "I was fishing on a public beach. I provided identification immediately. I did not resist. My belongings were searched without consent. I was handcuffed and detained without probable cause. I am a U.S. citizen. You have two agents who conducted an unlawful stop solely because of the color of my skin." Lane turned to Reynolds and Hayes. "Did he provide ID?" "Yes," Reynolds admitted reluctantly. "Did he show any aggression?" "No," Hayes muttered. "Did he consent to a search?" "No," Reynolds said. "Then you conducted an illegal search and unlawful arrest," Lane stated flatly. Dr. Grant nodded once, his expression composed. "That is correct." Lane signaled the agents to remove the handcuffs. They hesitated, then obeyed. Dr. Grant rubbed his wrists lightly, keeping his voice measured. "I expect documentation of this incident, all camera footage, and accountability for the violation of my rights." Reynolds looked down at the sand. Hayes avoided eye contact entirely. Lane watched them both. "This matter will be investigated. There will be consequences." Dr. Grant stood, collected his fishing gear, and addressed the crowd briefly. "Thank you for your attention and for recording this. Your evidence will matter." The witnesses began to disperse, some talking animatedly to each other, others still filming. The woman who had recorded from the start approached him. "I have everything. I'll give it to you." "I appreciate that," Dr. Grant said, calm but firm. I want to ensure this is documented fully so no one else is treated this way. The first seeds of accountability were being planted. This incident was no longer private. Social media, witnesses, and the law were all watching. And Dr. Grant knew one thing: this was just the beginning. By mid-morning, the story of Dr. Elijah Grant's arrest had already started to spread. The video captured by the jogger and Dr. Grant himself was circulating rapidly online. Within 2 hours, thousands of views had turned into millions. People were shocked, outraged, and demanding answers. News crews began arriving at Clearwater Beach, capturing footage of the now empty spot where Dr. Grant had been fishing, along with scattered tackle, his rod resting against the sand. Back at the Tampa Customs and Border Protection Office, the mood was tense. Reynolds and Hayes were sitting in a small conference room, fidgeting under the glare of their supervisors. Lane, the supervisory agent, had called in an internal affairs officer to review the incident immediately. Documents, emails, and witness statements were already being prepared. Lane started the meeting. "I've seen the footage. I've read the preliminary statements. You need to explain why you arrested Dr. Grant." Reynolds spoke first, defensive. "We were following protocol. We have authority to question anyone within 100 miles of a border. He was non-compliant and recording us." Lane leaned forward, voice firm. "Recording is not a crime," and he complied by providing identification. "You did not have reasonable suspicion. Explain why you handcuffed him." Hayes hesitated. He challenged us verbally, citing the law. I thought he might escalate." Lane shook his head. "That is not justification. You made a decision to detain a man who did nothing illegal. You violated his rights. This will be documented, and there will be consequences." Meanwhile, Dr. Grant had returned home to Dunedin. He carefully documented every detail from that morning: the timing, the conversations, the items in his tackle box, the witnesses' names, and all phone numbers. He compiled screenshots of videos shared online. Every detail was meticulous. This was not just about himself anymore. It was about ensuring justice and accountability. Within 24 hours, reporters had contacted him. He gave measured statements, keeping his tone calm but firm. "I was fishing on a public beach, doing nothing illegal. I was approached, questioned, searched, and arrested solely because of my skin color. This is racial profiling. This is a violation of civil rights." The media response was immediate. National outlets ran the story. Headlines focused on the absurdity: a decorated Navy veteran, a respected scientist, arrested on a public beach hundreds of miles from any border. Social media exploded with outrage. Hashtags calling for justice for Dr. Grant went viral. Within days, more people came forward, sharing similar experiences with Reynolds and Hayes. A Cuban-American woman recalled being stopped at a grocery store. A Puerto Rican man described being detained for hours because an agent doubted his ID. A black college student told how she had been questioned repeatedly while driving through Florida. All encounters were unnecessary and racially motivated. Dr. Grant knew the pattern was clear. These agents had repeatedly targeted people of color. The only difference this time was that he had the experience, knowledge, and resources to make sure it was recorded. He contacted a top civil rights attorney, Vanessa Morales, who had successfully litigated against federal agencies. Morales explained the options: file a formal complaint with the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, and a federal lawsuit against the agents and CBP for violations of the Fourth Amendment, racial profiling, false arrest, and emotional distress. Dr. Grant agreed immediately. The lawsuit was precise. Every moment of the morning was documented. Every conversation, every illegal search, every handcuffing, every witness was included. The damages requested were substantial: $25 million, reflecting both punitive measures and the professional impact on Dr. Grant's career. CBP quickly began an internal investigation, spurred by public pressure. Agents' previous complaints were reviewed. The findings were shocking. Reynolds had 14 prior complaints over his career, 11 involving people of color stopped far from any legitimate border enforcement. Hayes had 7 complaints, 5 involving similar racial dynamics. Supervisors had noted patterns, yet minimal disciplinary action had been taken. The DOJ's Civil Rights Division opened its formal investigation 3 months later. They didn't just focus on Dr. Grant's case. They examined the broader issue: why CBP agents were conducting immigration checks on beaches and residential areas, and why repeated complaints went unaddressed. Dr. Grant's documentation proved critical. Witnesses shared their videos and contact information. He had captured everything clearly: the illegal search of his tackle box, the officer's false claims over the radio, the unnecessary handcuffing. The evidence was overwhelming. Then came a critical development. One of the agent's past stops had been recorded by a civilian years earlier. The DOJ and journalists discovered that Reynolds and Hayes had engaged in a systematic pattern of racial profiling. It wasn't just one mistake, it was repeated behavior that had gone unchecked. Court filings included detailed timelines, witness statements, and statistical analyses. The disproportionate stops of Black and Latino individuals were undeniable. Reynolds had stopped minorities at a rate 7 times higher than white individuals in areas where the demographics didn't justify such disparities. Hayes' numbers were also alarming. Dr. Grant's case quickly became a national conversation. Law professors cited it in lectures about constitutional rights. Civil rights organizations used it as an example of unchecked federal overreach. Social media users compared footage from different stops, showing the same patterns repeated. Even before the trial, CBP felt pressure. Supervisory personnel were reassigned. Training protocols were reviewed. Internal memos warned agents to avoid racial profiling. Dr. Grant's evidence had created a ripple effect that agencies could no longer ignore. Dr. Grant remained composed. He continued his research, but legal proceedings became a major part of his life. He balanced lab work, student mentoring, and preparing for depositions. Each step reinforced the principle: protecting civil rights requires action and evidence. The intensity increased as court dates approached. Depositions included Reynolds and Hayes recounting their version, but the witnesses' recordings contradicted every claim. Emails, videos, and statements painted a consistent picture. Dr. Grant was fully compliant, peaceful, and legally in the right. Finally, the courtroom was set. The evidence was stacked: recordings, witness testimony, previous complaints, internal CBP documents. Expert witnesses explained constitutional law and proper procedures. The narrative was clear. 2 agents had overstepped their authority, violated civil rights, and engaged in racial profiling with a pattern of repeated offenses. The defense tried to argue that the agents acted in good faith following training, but the training manual clearly prohibited stops based solely on race or appearance. The argument collapsed under the weight of evidence. Dr. Grant watched quietly from the gallery. He had done everything correctly. He had followed the law, documented everything, and ensured accountability. The trial would be long, the courtroom tense, but one thing was certain: this story had gone far beyond a simple morning of fishing. The courtroom was packed the first day of the trial. Media cameras lined the walls. Civil rights advocates filled seats, journalists took notes furiously, and ordinary citizens crowded the gallery to witness what had started as a peaceful morning on a Florida beach. Dr. Elijah Grant sat quietly, reviewing his notes. His calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the tension in the room. The prosecution began by laying out the facts in chronological order. The video footage from the beachfront jogger played on a large screen. The crowd of witnesses in the courtroom murmured as they saw the handcuffing, the unnecessary search of Dr. Grant's tackle box, and the agent's repeated demands for papers despite him providing identification immediately. The lead prosecutor, a sharp, precise attorney named Allison Vega, addressed the jury. "You will see a pattern," she said firmly. "A black man fishing on a public beach was arrested without probable cause, searched without consent, and detained unlawfully. You will hear evidence showing these agents had done this before. They acted because of race, not law. The evidence is overwhelming, clear, and indisputable." Reynolds and Hayes sat at the defense table, visibly uncomfortable. Reynolds fidgeted with his pen. Hayes avoided eye contact with anyone in the room. They had no way to argue the facts. The video footage, witness testimony, and prior complaints painted a picture that could not be refuted. The first witness called was Dr. Grant himself. He explained calmly, step by step, what happened that morning, the fishing routine, the approach by the agents, the verbal demands, the illegal search, and the handcuffing. He also described the effect this had on him personally and professionally. "I have spent decades working with federal agencies on environmental policy," he explained. "I have testified before Congress. I have collaborated with NOAA and EPA. The unlawful arrest has caused complications in my work and reputational harm. I have had to explain to colleagues why I was handcuffed for fishing on a public beach. That is the impact of their actions." The courtroom was silent. Every juror, every observer, could see the injustice clearly. The prosecution then played recordings Dr. Grant had made himself. The agents' own voices, their orders, their false statements to their supervisor over the radio, all exposed them. Next came witnesses from the beach. The jogger who filmed, the man with the dog, and others testified. They described what they saw. Dr. Grant calm, cooperative, unresisting, and the agents escalating unnecessarily. Each testimony reinforced the narrative of racial profiling and abuse of authority. Then came the records from the CBP internal files. Reynolds had 14 prior complaints. Hayes had 7. Many involved stops of Black or Latino individuals with no legal basis. Documentation showed minimal consequences had been issued, despite repeated patterns. The jury could see that this wasn't a one-off mistake. It was a repeated, unchecked behavior pattern. The defense attempted to argue that the agents followed protocol and acted in good faith. But a legal expert called by the prosecution dismantled this argument. Federal guidelines explicitly prohibit stops based solely on appearance. Agents require specific, articulable suspicion. These agents had none. Acting on race alone is unlawful. Finally, the prosecution addressed damages. Dr. Grant's legal team presented emails from federal partners concerned about collaborating with someone arrested unlawfully, testimony on emotional distress, and the impact on his ability to perform his work. The total impact was substantial. After a week of testimony, the defense rested. Closing arguments emphasized the clear violations, the pattern of misconduct, and the professional and personal harm caused. The jury deliberated for 5 hours. When they returned, the foreperson stood. On all counts, we find the defendants guilty. Reynolds and Hayes' faces fell. The courtroom gasped. Guilty on all counts: deprivation of rights under color of law, false arrest, and illegal search. Sentencing followed 6 weeks later. Reynolds received 18 months in federal prison, 3 years of supervised release, and a permanent ban from any law enforcement role. Hayes received 14 months, 3 years supervised release, and the same ban. Their careers, pensions, and reputations were gone. Their personal lives suffered. Reynolds' marriage ended. Hayes lost friendships and relocated to escape public recognition. Separately, the civil lawsuit against CBP and DHS went to trial. Dr. Grant's legal team presented extensive documentation of emotional distress, professional complications, and long-term consequences. Emails and correspondence showed colleagues questioning their continued collaborations with him due to the arrest.